Welcome to the Somerset PE and School Sport Conference 2014, organised by SASP, looking to educate and develop PE specialists and head teachers around the use of the sport premium funding. Over 80 schools are attending the day, looking at the development of professionals to enhance the impact and inspire young people within sport.
I've come along today to promote and talk about and do a couple of workshops based around Real PE, which is a product Create have developed, and it's aimed at developing the specialist and non-specialist primary teacher, and it's a sustainable programme, so with good use of the sports premium budget, and we've been doing some workshops and trying some activities, and the staff have been brilliant, having a go at the different activities and learning about all the different ways in which we can develop children, and they've had a great day. I think the idea of the day at Millfield has been to see what is available. We need to put a clear plan in place for how the money is going to be spent over the time that it's available. So I think it's important that PE leaders come along and then they can find out about what's available and they can disseminate that back and organise training and opportunities for the children in our schools based on that. The best part of the day for me was the reaction of the staff that came along to my workshops based on the activities that we did. They had really good fun, they really enjoyed the activities, and there was a buzz around the place, which was really nice.
I own my own sports coaching company, and I go to various primary schools teaching PE. So I've come here today to obviously try and get some few ideas about how to develop my skills and implement that into the schools. Found with the session we've just had, I found some new ideas using the different cones, thinking about how to engage the children to get out of their comfort zone, but also if they're struggling, where and how to indicate that as well. Later on I'm doing the outdoor activities workshop, looking for more ideas and again how to implement that into the school scheme that I'm using at the moment. From what I've had in the first couple of hours, I've had loads of ideas, so hopefully that will kind of carry on throughout the day.
Good morning everybody, and firstly welcome to Millfield School. I'm delighted to host you this evening and today, and I'm very keen for this whole area of our engagement, certainly with Somerset, to widen, and a number of sports, those who are involved in a few sports across Somerset, please come in, don't worry me, a number of sports that we're dealing with Somerset to foster those links as well, and you'll see that as part of my presentation. My job is to influence the governors and the stakeholders for all the sports we're involved, manage and mentor the staff. I want to emphasise this, instill a high-performing culture. Note, I haven't used the word performance. How we behave, how we communicate, how we deliver feedback, how we deal with conflict. Really important. Most recent, which I'm going to focus on here, implement a sports science strategy here at the school. I was honoured to be involved in most probably the biggest 8 years of development in performance sport in the country, and what you saw then played out in 2012. And the biggest factor that really came in one of the top, certainly the top 3 factors, was sports science. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Managing budgets. But I'd like you to focus on this bottom word, and actually I thought about putting this word at the top, but then again with the technology issues you might not see it. Inspire. That is my number one job. I inspire for people to think there's no any barriers to performance breakthrough, that they can believe and meet any of their aspiration, whether they're a member of staff or a pupil. That is my number one job. And I see that being played out the next 3-4 years. Very quick glimpse. This is Millfield Sport. And when Baroness Sue Campbell talks about they were 10th in the medal table and we got them to 3rd, how? This was part of the process. Part of the process for all those NGBs who went into London. They had a vision, they had a mission, and they had objectives. And we were annually measured against them. So when you hear in the news most recently, for example, British water polo lost all their funding. British synchronised swimming lost their funding. British basketball lost their funding. Fundamentally, that top end of the pyramid is where they will be measured. But I'd like to just highlight a few words in our objectives, which might surprise a few of you. Look at the first one. Look at that word. And yes, high performers, academic integration. I have a term, when I first started the school here, I used the term performance lifestyle. People say, what is performance lifestyle? The ability to deliver on the field as well as off it. Because my experience tells me those who can plan, set goals, look at their balanced lifestyle, recognise their family, their friends, their coaches, are normally the ones who perform on the field. Very clear. And if you actually look at the performances of the Olympic teams, British Olympic teams, most of them, the high performers, had a balanced performance lifestyle. And so the academic element here has to be integrated with what we're ever delivering in sport. And our 9 strategies that we're delivering across digital platform. I'll give you a quick headline summary. What is that? The ability to give quick, efficient feedback to pupils and coaches. Millfield Institute of Sport and Wellbeing. I'll cover that in a minute. Profile, making sure everything we do here has a resonance with the parents, with the pupils, with the governors, with the local media, with the national media. Our facilities, and we don't, believe it or not, have everything. Some areas that we're looking at. HR and finance, some of these areas you would have in your school. School sport, and this is one area I do for this group want to focus at. This has become a fundamental area. And it was interesting, I didn't know what Baroness Sue Campbell was going to say this morning. Well-being, opportunity, participation and integration. I have a personal view that Millfield might be missing out on some talent they already got on the campus rather than even looking at recruitment through scholarships or general recruitment. And this area has become a fundamental focus for us. We never did circuit training, for example. We get now nearly 80 in 3 sessions a week turning up to circuit training outside the normal games operation. Scholarships, community, and the coach program. The last one I would talk about that. I heard Baroness Sue Campbell again talk about could you use some of your 9,000 in terms of coaching and support. This area, we've just started. We have 9 coaches on what I call a holistic program. We know they can technically coach, but can they lead? Can they manage? Are they self-aware? And do they fundamentally look at themselves holistically? And that program's running now for 9 coaches. As I say, I've got to move very quickly. So I've got to skip these slides because I'm conscious of your lunch times today as well. But these are the areas of the clear strategies that we're working to. Since I've been here, I joined in January 2013, I've really looked at these following themes. The profile of the sports that we have here, and we have 28. No independent school is like us. So you could go to an independent school in the Midlands and they'll have the game of the term and all the boys will play rugby, or they'll play football, all the girls will play netball. In year 9, they have a choice of 2 sports in each term. From year 10, it's open. So actually, when you see Millfield play, we don't often put out D, E and F teams in rugby because we have boys and girls going off and doing golf, fencing, squash, cricket in a winter program, swimming. So our depth is pretty wide and diverse. We look at supporting talent and where that sits. Long-term athlete development. Fundamentally integrated now across the sports. And we take a lot of guidance from the NGBs, but especially here around specialisation. With the exception of swimming and tennis, our focus here is we're not really sitting down with a young boy or girl until year 11 to talk about specialisation. We look at keeping it wide, keeping that depth and breadth of choice for them, because it was pretty well proven, I don't know if you're aware of this stat, but 90% of the medalists from London didn't specialise in their sport until 16 and a half. So it's a fundamental focus for us here as well. We look at coach behaviour and the impact on talent. We look at coach-parent relationship. I think you've all been there, and we do go there here, I can tell you. A lot of it is around managing expectations. A lot of parents think we've got magic water. You know, so it's around managing that parent and the expectations, making sure that we are educating up front, not reacting, so that we're doing that up front. And certainly those who may have needed it, we've got the new 9 at Millfield program starting this September, and that's fundamentally one of the processes we're behind. And a high-performing coaching environment to ensure that the best the pupil can be the best they possibly can be. Because if I go back to the whole fundamental of process, experience and toolbox, the outcome looks after itself. So, what did we look at? So Barris Sue Campbell was fundamentally behind a process for Olympic sports. It's called the Sporting Dimensions. And they looked at 3 areas. Actually, they called it athlete. I didn't think that was appropriate here. They looked at 3 areas: pupil, system and climate. The pupil, their performances, development profiles, well-being, health and commitment. System, the staff, the structures around the sport, the facilities, the processes that go along it, the expertise and knowledge that supports those sports. And the climate, which I like the best. This is David's favourite. The mood in the camp, the culture, the feel, the day-to-day experience. Everybody's having a good time. You can walk in, I can read a room. You can walk into a sport when you know it's not happening. You can walk in a room and you can see that the coach is most probably a little bit tense, having to deal with a parent, or his session hasn't quite run. You can talk to a pupil here and they'll tell you if they're enjoying their sport. So what we do is I ask each sport to look at those 3 areas here. We started this in January and went through the first process. I then, within those, pupil, systems and climate, I asked them to consider the following. So when we have a discussion about pupils, this is what we discuss. Under systems, this is what we discuss. And under climate, this is what we discuss. And on a termly basis, it's normally 1.5 hours to 2 hours. I update what you're going to see in a minute, a tracker board. It's going to be once a year because of just the nature of the school and how it works. Ideally, I would like to do it twice a year, but it's going to be once a year. So we have a discussion around all these areas. And, you know, this one is an interesting one, communication information. How we deal with academic. How do we deal with NGBs? How do we deal with parents? So I asked the coach to look, or the heads of sport, to look really wide at their sport. And then what we come up with is then we say to them, okay, sport, right, now traffic light yourself. Gold, green, amber and red. So we added an extra traffic light. You don't see those on the roads. But this is this outstanding match for world-class and international benchmark, a potential source of learning and inspiration to others. If we do get golds, I want other sports to know about the golds. Performing, challenging, failing. Now, definition of failing is an interesting one because that has maybe different ways of doing things. So I deliberately influence some of our sports to make some areas red. Let me give you an example. They may want a facility change. For me to flag it red, it will help me to influence the governors and the senior management team to do that. So you've got to make sure you use this right. So what we ended up with was this. And this is our tracker board for Millfield School. So, and just to explain, the ups and downs are the movements from the previous time I did the tracking with them. All right? And it's not a Q&A session, but guess where I spent most of my time in the first 12 months? It's pretty obvious. This is pretty impressive. And that comes from not just meeting the heads of sport, but the day-to-day talking to the coaches and the pupils. And this drives how we efficient the area. It also has had a pretty big impact on budget, believe it or not, as well. Just conscious of my time. So, for each sport, I asked them to look at their vision and strategy, how we support the pupil and the feedback we give them, the structures and systems around them, the mood in the camp, the progression and performance of pupils, and in particular, year 9, 10 and 11 is becoming a major focus for me. Because I have a view, which is mostly backed up by most of our heads of sport, that the impact on learning is in that age groups. Sixth form and where they are in terms of performing sport is normally the icing on the cake. Resources and partnerships that we have, obviously the facilities, and the integration with school sport. That link must not be lost. Because the danger with an environment we have here is you could have performance up in the clouds here and school going on here. That doesn't happen here. So I asked each sport, I did ask his permission, the head girls hockey. So this is somewhere, so we set all his goals, his mission and objectives. This was his reflection at Christmas, where he reported back. And I asked them to look at that on a termly basis. So there's always what I call a pulse review going on, checking that mood in the camp. Is what we put in place working? The staff we've employed, is it working? And I just want to just emphasize, never forget the values and behaviours. So our values, community, leadership and excellence, I asked them this. So I went with golf yesterday. If I walk into your environment, what would I see in community? What would I see in leadership? And what would I see in excellence? Never underestimate the impact on values in your environment. And if your pupils and staff engaged with that. Early days, but I'm quite pleased what we're starting to see here. So the Millfield Institute of Sport and Wellbeing. So I did that profiling exercise, and it became pretty clear these were the key areas that were missing. I'd come from an environment where we had provision around our sport. I inherited an environment where we did a bit of S&C. We had, let's not take it away from some of the masters in charge here, teachers who take sport. They do an outstanding job. But their time is limited because they don't have the element to deliver this. So we now have a full-time strength and conditioning coach with an intern. We have a physio with 2 interns. Our nutrition is now integrated into the school academic program, so we can offer one-to-one advice. We have an individual comes in 2 days a week to support on one-to-one and do some cultural development with each sport. That's linked with here. And may I mention the Youth Sport Trust. I also signed the license for the Junior Athlete Education Programme that they developed, and that was delivered over this 3 terms to 140 pupils. How to plan, how to set goals, how to recognise who are the right people around you, how to communicate to help those there. We videoed, but that's all we did. We now have a performance analysis intern, and we've started our holistic coach development. One message to you, though, is, because I listened to Baroness Sue Campbell about the £9,000 of it, this hasn't cost us any more money. Because the profiling exercise we did told me what I had to take out, because it had no impact. And that is this process that the sports went through during Beijing Olympic cycle and London Olympic cycles, because that experience tells you where your waste is, where you're doing an activity and was it having impact. And early stages area, but in particular this area, and that word does frighten us. So we're not going to, this word actually is only going to apply to the 6th form from September. We're going to use athlete physical development for year 9s, 10s, 11s, because that actual word, actually, believe it or not, frightens parents. They think it's going in and lifting weights in the gym. Just language. So this is an area, and I'd like to finish. I'm going to be running slightly over, and I just wanted to emphasise to go back to the original point of inspire. So I've had to rush today because of the time element. But someone asked me the other day, was there one thing that's really impacted on you in the last 2 cycles, and on my time as an Olympic athlete, and school sport, and the role we played? Well, let me tell you a little story. We met as Olympic sports in St Andrews in November 2011. And it was a little bit tingling time for a lot of sports. 2012 was on the horizon. Everybody was getting a little bit twitchy. And there was no real focus on what our role was as leaders, whether we're performance director managing our coaches or our coaches managing our athletes. And Frank Dick, who did a presentation, then worked with the performance directors, and I was a member of a team of 8 called the Performance Directors Strategic Group. So you may have heard of Dave Brailsford in cycling and Dave Tanner of rowing. I was very fortunate to be on that group. And he helped us pick a video which is so relating to your job day to day, to my job day to day, about your role in inspiring and for the pupil or the athlete, and anything's possible. And I'd just like to show you this one video. And I use this with our staff. I've used it a little bit here with the coaches, but I used it for my staff for 2012, and it had a huge impact.
This class is social studies. That is you and the world. Yes, there is a world out there, and even if you decide you don't want to meet it, it's still going to hit you right in the face. Believe me. So, best you start thinking about the world now and what it means to you. What does the world mean to you? Come on, a little class participation here. Is it just this class you want to get out of? Your house? Your street? Any further any of you want to go than that? Yes?
The mall. That's only like 2 miles away from me.
Well, let me ask you another question. How often do you think about things that happen outside of this town? You watch the news? Yes? No? All right, so we're not global thinkers yet, but why aren't we?
Because we're 11.
Good point. What's your name?
Trevor.
Maybe Trevor is absolutely right. Why should we think about the world? I mean, after all, what does the world expect of us?
Expect.
Of you. What does the world expect of you?
Nothing.
Nothing. My God, boys and girls, he's absolutely right. Nothing. I mean, here you are, you can't drive, you can't vote, you can't even go to the bathroom without a pass from me. You're stuck right here in the 7th grade. But not forever. Because one day, you'll be free. Well, what if on that day you're free, you haven't prepared, you're not ready, and then you look around you and you don't like what the world is? What if the world is just a big disappointment?
We're screwed.
Unless you take the things that you don't like about this world and you flip them upside down right on their ass. Don't tell your parents I used that word. And you can start that today. This
Because it will change our world and put it into action.
extra credit, it goes on all year long. Now wait a minute, what? What's wrong with this? What's the matter? Yes?
It's like so
So what? There must be a word to finish that sentence. Someone help her?
weird. Crazy.
Weird. Crazy.
Hard. Bummer.
Bummer. Hard. How about possible? It's possible. The realm of possibility exists where? In each of you. Here. So you can use it. You can surprise us. It's up to you. Or you can just sit back and let it atrophy. Atrophy. If there is a word you hear that you don't understand, there's a dictionary at the front of the room. Look it up. And there are these dictionaries, which you will carry with you at all times, because in this class, we're going to learn to love words and their meanings. Any questions?
Yeah. So you'll like flunk us if we don't change the world.
Well, no, I wouldn't do that. But you might just squeak by with a C.
What you ever do to change the world?
Well, Trevor, I get a good night's sleep. I eat a hearty breakfast. I show up on time. And then I pass the buck to you. Now, I want you all to write your names in these books. And listen. Molly, all right, I want Molly to look up the word happy.
So, that's my job. That's our job. That was our job for Beijing. It was our job for London. Our job is to inspire. We do all the planning. I can show you till I'm blue in the face what I do about profiling and what I do about appraisals, because that's the process bit. Then you go to the experience bit, giving them that positive experience. You give them the support and any element to match their aspiration. And then what comes out of it is a toolbox so that young person can move on to be the person they want to be, because we've tried to make sure they be the best they possibly can be. And that, for me, that video packages that as our role in sport. Thank you for listening. For me, I'm delighted you're here today. I am conscious of times. I am around. Any questions, please shout. Thank you.